Take me back to 1975.
1975, 15 years old, infatuated with Bruce Lee. Um, that was the year I realized this is what I was going to do. I was going to just teach self defense, which was a crazy thing because I make the joke. I remember my mom saying to me, we had a generational family business that was very successful. And back in 1975, I think there were only like 4 or 5 jobs. You couldn't be an influencer. That didn't exist yet. So she said, you're going to go into the family business. You're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, policeman, astronaut, veterinarian. Those are the only jobs then. And I looked up, I was on the floor trying to get the splits, looking at Bruce Lee magazines. And I said, Mom, school's not going to be that important for me. I'm going to be a famous martial artist. So I'm going to teach self-defense like Bruce Lee. And she pat me on the head, said, okay, honey, we'll talk about this when you're older. So there was something I knew as soon as I started studying martial arts and infatuated with Lee. He said something, a quote that was attributed to him. He said, to hell with circumstances, I'll create my own circumstances. And for some reason, like at a young age, I knew that was going to be important to me as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, facing, getting married, kids, and all that fear that comes with running your life. So, but I knew then.
And you started teaching at 17.
1977 was I started teaching. I had I was had I was in school at the time and got in a fight with the guy that became my first student, which was crazy. He was from another martial arts system, and we're at school, university in Toronto, and he sees me working out, and he does this hard style goju ryu, and I was like very eclectic and influenced by Bruce Lee, but I was into boxing and kickboxing, and I'd wrestled, and so we're having kind of like a debate in the rec room where there was a bag, and he was doing all this chi pulling stuff that would appear on. You ever see McDojo? The
Man.
It's a very popular website on Instagram of like things where you scratch your head and go, are they really practicing this? So he was doing one of these things, energy transfers into bags, and I'm smashing the bag, like, and I'm going, dude, like when you extend your chi into the bag, it doesn't move. When I punch the bag, it moves. This is observable. And he's going, no, my master, da 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 da. And I said, okay. And literally that Friday night, we were drinking. There were definitely adult beverages involved, and we're coming back, and he gets in a fight in front of the elevator, and he's standing there arguing with this guy, and I'm kind of watching, and all of a sudden it's like it's coming to blows, and this guy's name was Tracy. He does this punch to the guy's sternum. He goes Kia, and he pulls the punch, and the guy yells because he thinks he's hit. So he goes Kia, and the guy goes ah, and then he's like, I'm okay, and he fucking drops my new buddy with a hook punch, and he falls down, but nobody knows we're together. Like and there were no smartphones back then. People were just, oh shit, fight. And I start laughing because I'm drunk, and I'm laughing because we just talked about this in the rec room the day before. So people are looking at me like I'm a psycho, right? This guy's laughing that somebody got knocked out. And he then asked me to start training. He was literally my first student, like, because of that. And so then when I got back, I ended up quitting university because it wasn't for me. Went to work in my dad's office, and the head shipper, this guy named Bobby, he was 28. I was like 18 at the time. He knew I was into martial arts. This guy was like a street fighter, and we started training, and it was just like ongoing stuff, and it started to grow from there.
And then you started full time at 19. And most people don't even have any discipline at that age. Like, what made you different in that?
I loved so I taught tennis. I taught skiing. I was a professional ski instructor at 15. I started skiing when I was like hardly could walk. My parents were a famous ski family. So I loved coaching. I loved helping people. I loved that transformation, that little light in their eyes when they would acquire a new skill or an insight. So I was always like natural at that. And and so it wasn't for me, it wasn't a question of like passion, obsession, discipline. It was just what I was doing all the time. I literally, it was only recently that I used the word obsessed. Maybe about 2 years ago, I was doing some coaching with some entrepreneurs, And I noticed that people are afraid to use the word obsessed that had a negative connotation. And I said, well, like obsession is like if you could trump passion, it's obsession.
Yep.
And but the obsession can't, you can't be, the fine print, like no animals were harmed in this commercial,
Yeah.
right? Your obsession can't harm animals. It can't harm your family. It can't harm, if your obsession is bringing you uh, the fruits of labor and your transformations and your evolution, then that's awesome.
We could talk about that, like words like that, like obsession, manipulation, like all of that, but that's for another show.
It's another show, man.
Um, and so when I was reading your newsletter, I read that you told a venture capitalist at like 20 years old that you wanted to make the world a safer place. Now, most people don't even know at that age what they want for lunch.
Right.
Where does that level of clarity come from?
I don't, it's so crazy. So no one's ever asked me that question in 45 years of teaching. Uh, and so I got to ponder that. That's awesome. No one's ever asked me where did that come from, because it just came out of my mouth. It was, and these days, you talk about um, in business consulting and entrepreneurship. People talk is what's your big, hairy, audacious, something that scares you and all that, right? Like you would think at 20 years old, how do you make the world safer? Would be a scary, contemplation. I don't know. I was so I grew up with so much fear that I thought when I started my martial arts training that that would eradicate it and eliminate it. And my investigation into managing violence made me realize that um, you can't stop that. You can't, some days you're the bug and some days you're the windshield, and you can't stop if or when something's going to happen. But imagine having no choice if you were facing sudden violence. But what precedes sudden violence is sudden fear. And if you can't manage that fucking fear, you're going to have trouble managing the violence. And I organically, by helping other people when I was teaching, I discovered like this whole different way to look at fear and kind of realized that we need to distinguish between the psychology of fear and the biology of fear. And I actually, and we've talked about this before, I think, but I actually train psychologists who, got their degrees and stuff like that because nobody was talking about this. And nobody still is really, which is kind of cool for my company. And we have one of our brands is No Fear, spelled Know. And and so that insight totally changed everything for me. And I was intuitively recognizing that this is what's happening. And so for me, I said, I abhor fear, I abhor violence. And it was just obvious to me that everyone else would feel the same way. And so when I got asked, and the setup with the venture capitalist guy was I was training this wealthy real estate mogul and his kid. And he said to me, man, like, you do stuff differently. I want to introduce you to this VC. And I literally said, what's VC? It's 1980. I don't know what VC is. I'm 20. He says, venture capital. I'm like, what's venture capital? He goes, dude, you got the X factor. Go talk to this guy. I'm like, what's the X factor? Just go to this meeting. And I'm sitting there, and the guy says, hey, Rick says you've got the X factor. He says, how can I help you? What do you want to do? And it was like, I want to make the world safer. And it was like that moment where he will, how do you plan on doing that? And what I said, I explained, I actually had like the hypothesis, the blueprint. I said, I have intuited a system based on behavior and kinesiology and psychology where uh, the system adapts to you. Like every person training would have their own self-defense system. And he's like, looked at me with like it was like cartoon eyes, like going, he just didn't get it. He's like, well, good luck with that type thing. And it's wild. It's wild. And then, I ended up, here I am, 65, still doing that and making the world safer. And I think we figured out recently with a little bit of ChatGPT help, uh, that we've impacted over 500,000 people since then. Just all
Wow.
started teaching professionally in 1980, and we've worked with uh, uh, every military group, all the acronym groups, uh, martial artists, CCW instructors, school teachers, doctors, pilots, airlines, entrepreneurs, business people, corporations. And it's wild. And people ask, well, how can you teach a special operations guy and a businessman? That's because what unites us all is the psychology of fear. And then what happens when you get a fear spike is physiological, and it's uniform across the human species, regardless of gender, age, or training. So it's it's wild, and it's sometimes I sit there like kind of 30,000 foot view, just on going like looking at the body of work created over those, and it's just all from that intuition.
Hmm. You said fear isn't the enemy, it's the energy. How would you explain that to the guy who's paralyzed by his fear right now?
Uh, so that's an interesting question. The reframe is to explain that the fear spike. So one of my favorite acronyms for fear is false expectations appearing real.
Mm,
So false expectations appearing real, meaning I'm running a movie in my mind, and I'm the director and I'm the screenwriter, and I've cast myself as the victim in my own movie. And when I share that to people, so when I'm doing one-on-ones, consulting, whatever it is, people are like, "Whoa!" Like that hits people pretty hard. And but it's an obvious one. What I obviously try to make the what's complex in someone's mind as simple as possible. And when I realized that, so my whole life fear has been the enemy. Meaning, if I felt fear, my relationship with it was that I must not be ready. I must be missing something. Otherwise, why would I be afraid? Not realizing that many of our heroes are are afraid. You know the uh, if we looked at let's say some guitar heroes and stuff, like a lot of these people had to get ripped to like just lose self-consciousness and find that flow state, right?
mhm.
That's you say what you want, but that's fear. um the and I make this joke. Have I ever had my unicorn talk with you? Did we ever talk about that? Does it ring a bell?
It rings a bell, but
The so if you do something that's exemplary, like I look, go, holy shit, dude, how did you deliver that speech? How did you get up on stage? How did you play that solo? How did you jump out of that airplane and skydive? If I'm amazed at your courage and your performance, then I'm not the unicorn that you are. Meaning, and I use this example, like allegedly Mozart was writing his masterpieces when he was 7 or 8, something like that, right? And let's say Beethoven was too, and Chopin, whatever. If those guys got together, Beethoven, let's say he was watching Mozart, he wouldn't go, "How did you do that?" He knows exactly because he's a unicorn.
right.
So I always remind people, like, if you're looking at someone going, "How does he do that?" You're not a unicorn. That doesn't mean you can't be inspired by that person. It doesn't mean you can't emulate or learn, but it's very different for somebody who just it comes naturally to. So back to your question, most people, when we look at whether it's a Steve Jobs or a Jeff Bezos or whoever your unicorn is, and they go, man, everything that guy touches is gold. First of all, most of the time it's not. We see the Instagram,
The highlight
so
reel.
the highlight reel. I wrote an article for Substack years ago that the title was "You're Not Your Best Selfie," because most people take 20 selfies to post their selfie,
Yep.
right? Like if you're just doing a selfie, that's one,
Right.
right? So check this, no, fuck, shit, right? Um, so it's a funny contemplation, but the whole fear thing and I'm trying to unpack it in a meaningful way for people. Is you you can't so people look at me as like this famous fear management guy, not realizing that I have fear every single day.
Mm.
How are my kids going to do? How's the business? How's the market? Oh, we lost, like, one of my main businesses is training military. So we thought, when the new administration was going to be in office, things like the faucets were going to turn on. We're going to get the contracts again. Well, that didn't happen because of all the bullshit in Congress, and then they shut down, the government, and then contracts just stopped. So like that generates fear. The it took me decades and to realize that if I separate fear from biological fear and psychological fear, I could control the fear because if I get to know fear, if I make friends with fear, if I realize that fear's not my enemy, it's my energy, and I direct it, I can do something with it. So
Mm.
so in the metaphor, it's like your body's a car, your business plan, your strategy, your whatever your brains are is your nav system, and to move, fear is the fuel. And so we need that, especially in the evolution of life. If you're So the scariest day of anyone's life would be sudden violence. So I'm working with a lot of entrepreneurs now, a lot of business people now, and I explained to them, and I love this line, that if I told you, if I said, hey, I gotta talk to you about protecting your assets, they'd be like, I'm all in. But if I said, I want you to learn how to defend yourself and how to manage fear, they're like, I'm okay. I haven't been in a fight since high school. And I go, well, your most important asset is your ass. And the play on words is your asset, right? And if something happens to you, you have no portfolio, you have no family, you have no plan. And if something happens to you that doesn't take your life, but causes such, PTSD, or I had an event in 2010 where I lost my company, $12 million company, dissolved it overnight, like literally from Friday to Monday. And it was like years where I was in such protection mode. When I'd have people present business deals to me, like the PTSD cycle is, you're gonna fuck me. There's no way I'm giving you any equity. The fuck you. Even though I'm like going, okay, I'm listening like that, and all of that is fear. And so, we just created this system. It's a map. It's a formula that you look at that helps you kind of take the fear, almost like writing notes before you go to bed. I got to do this. I got to get it out of your head and look at it and unravel it. It's a big onion, a big fear onion. And when you get to the bottom of it, you realize, exactly what it is. But that becomes inspiring, and that's what we mean by fear isn't the enemy. It's just energy. And if you can look at it that way, it changes how long you're in a fear loop. And one last thing that I think is super important: we don't have fear for things that are in our comfort zone, that we're used to, good or bad. We just don't have fear about it. But if you try to evolve as a human, expand that comfort zone, and you go to the discomfort zone, that's where fear starts to manifest. And if you're in the holy shit zone, right? So you were talking about some of the new business stuff that you want to do, exciting, inspirational. When you get to a certain level, there's going to be a moment where you go, okay, am I actually doing this?
Yep.
Right? Am I going to sign this? Are we going to invest in this? Am I going to get investors? And then there's a moment where there's a big fear spike, and that fear spike will always create doubt. Doubt always creates hesitation. The danger is when it becomes procrastination. And so that's really where we work mostly with people, is when it becomes procrastination, because then you start to rationalize that. And that's that Richard Feynman quote I always love to use, that the first principle is to never fool yourself. And remember, you're the easiest person to fool.
And I can relate to this, and I've told you a little bit about it, and even what we were talking about at lunch in terms of some of the things that I want to do next, or that I'm starting right now,
Right.
but that I look forward to in 2026. But I definitely found myself in that spot. I don't talk, like I don't crowdsource or tell people like what my goals and plans are until like I'm actually in the motion of executing them. But I'm my own worst enemy because I would basically lie to myself, right? And if I was, and it would be in form of procrastination or putting things off because I was afraid of like, okay, if I need to get investors for this, or if I need to, what I have to do to get this all set up. And even if it was like small tasks, I would put it off and like, oh, I have other things to focus on.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it was either a fear of failure or a fear of like taking those next steps, and it was about to turn into procrastination. And until talking to you about numerous things, right, that I started to say, well, hold on a second, I have control of this now. And I recognize that it exists, but thank God I have you to talk to, because it's been pushing me. And whether you know it or not, our conversations, in certain personal and relationship things with my life, that what you've done for me has been tremendous. But on a professional level, I'm walking into 2026, and being that this podcast is shot in November of 2025, it's got me feeling lighter. Right, fear's still there. Simple things like buying domains today for a new business that I'm about to launch, and it's a fun business, something I've been wanting to do forever, but I kept putting it off because I knew like there were things I had to set up that I wasn't entirely experienced in. I knew a little bit about some of this stuff, but and then when I just started doing it,
Comes real.
it came
Yeah.
real. Yeah.
Yeah. So something even as simple as that, because what it is, it's that it's that commitment where you start to put the snowball in motion, and then it's rolling. But the no, it's super interesting. While you were saying that, there's a line that I always share with people, and you've heard me say it a bunch of times. But you can't be brave if you're not afraid.
Mm-hmm.
The primary ingredient of courage is fear, and that there are many things in life we need to do afraid, but you can't do them if unless you change your definition of what fear is. And so, that's that concept of fear isn't the enemy, fear is energy. And if you just remember that, if I said to you, in all areas of your life, would you like to be courageous?
Of
Of
course.
course, like who would say no? And so, what if I told you that if you had to do something, a conversation, defend yourself, be a courageous bystander, fire somebody, hire somebody, get divorced, get married, move, if I told you all of those require an element of courage? Because people, when I say, describe, if I asked you, what do you think is courageous? You might think of something like, oh, going to war and fighting for your country, or not realizing that, for me, uh, Jesse and I, as tough as we are, and as we've been horrible about letting go of people who are wrong in our company. Well, we'll keep them on for, like a couple of years, and then finally go, oh, can't believe it, because we feel so bad, right? Where now we're at a point where this morning we were talking, should we get rid of this person? She said, yes. I wrote a letter to the company, looked at it for a second. I'd never done this before on the drive up here. Didn't read it over, hit send, like, done. Like that. And while I'm talking about that, my physiology is changing because it's part of the holy shit zone was that would have taken 6 months. The discomfort zone was recognizing that I'm changing a behavior. That's all fear management, and it takes courage to do that. Like today at lunch, you're great because one of the questions I ask people when I'm working with companies and teams about this is I'll ask the group, how many of you, if you're at a nice restaurant and your food isn't served the way you ordered it, will send it back? And there's only ever one or two people in a crowd. I've never had three people in a group of 10, 20, or 30. You sent your state back right away today.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But most people would go, it's fine. It's okay. It's good. And when you ask them, so usually when I ask that question, people start giggling because they've seen the movies where, the food goes back and someone goes, oh, they don't like this. And they throw it on the floor or spit in it or whatever. And there's always that joke. And that's a perfect example of if I say to even Jesse, who has no filter, I don't know how I'm shadow banned on Instagram and she's not, um, but she will never return food, right? And she won't fire somebody. So she'll go, you do this. You need to make that call. Even though, like in other areas, she's way tougher than me. So if I measured her heart rate during that contemplation, there'd be a spike. So the idea of our no fear program and how we help people is getting people to help regulate their a relationship with the psychology of fear. So what starts to happen with the couple times we've spoken, and you had me talk at your event, and you had some big changes from that, where I've talked for 30 minutes, and you were able to extract things to contemplate and meditate on that changed your trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about psychobabble. It's giving people real actionable things. Uh, uh, things, and it's things we were talking about lunch, all right? Like if you weren't ready to hear that, Whatever I said would have gone over your head. You're
Hmm.
ready to hear it, you go boom. And what you did intuitively with the new business ventures in 2026 is, even though you might have that little buzz of anxiety, and again, anxiety is another word that has a negative connotation, like obsession. Uh, Anxiety just means anxious, and anxious could be, I was anxious when I asked Jessie to marry me. Not that I thought she was going to say no. It was like, oh my God, I'm going to do this, right? And so starting a new business should have anxiety, because you should be thinking about, can I make this work? This isn't a joke. Even though it's fun and it's cool, you should. And so even if you had fuck you money and it was like, hey, let's start another business, you should still care enough about the product and the service that it creates that anxiety. In the much in the same way, if you're talking to a business coach and they say, what is your big goal? What's the thing that scares you? Because that's the thing they want you to do.
Right.
Purpose, passion.
Yeah. That makes me think about 1993. You know, at the peak of your career, you decided to shut it down,
Close everything scary.
and that takes
Yeah.
fucking balls, man.
Dude, that was one of those things where um, I had started getting noticed by the different martial arts magazines, started getting seminar calls. Um, I had developed, the 15-year-old Tony had developed his own approach and loved it, just loved it. But I recognized that I'm not going to make the world safer just teaching 100 people in Montreal. And typically, when you go to seminars, what you have, I didn't really know this, but intuitively I knew it. You have other instructors coming to that, not so much students. It's interesting. The martial arts world is very bizarre. As much as my life as a martial artist has given me everything, my success, world travel, relationships, friendships, and stuff like that, but some very strange characters in it. So what I discovered very quickly is that the people who come to the seminars are instructors, because the students don't want to disrespect the instructor, so they're not going to go to someone else's, seminar. So it was, suddenly I realized, this is how I'm going to grow my business. And it was probably like, this is, in the early 90s. So the internet was brand new. We didn't have smartphones and stuff like that. But it's almost like in, if I'm talking to you about business guidance, and I go, hey, I sent out these newsletters and I only got this 30% open rate. And of that 30%, 10% said yes. And then 3%, bought. You'd go, those are good numbers, man. Right. Where I didn't know that, where I'd go out and there'd be 50 people in a seminar, and then three people would go, hey, how do I get certified? And I'm like, how come all 50 don't want to get certified? Like, I don't know what the numbers are and all that. But interestingly enough, if every one of those martial arts instructors recognized that my research on fear, on evidence-based scenario training, on ethically weaponizing fear, and intelligently weaponizing the startle response would make them more money, right? Would reduce the attrition in their school, would elevate their status in their community, would differentiate themselves from other schools. Like, well, the mom coming in, why should I send my kids here? And you go, well, we're affiliated with Tony Blauer, who's done this, and no other school in this area. They'd have all done that. So what was holding them back was fear, right? And
Mhm.
so there were three people that their intuition said, I know there's something missing, and they'd come forward. Um, it's been a wild, wild ride. But that decision, when I started doing a couple of seminars, I had my school open, but I immediately saw, like that. Those were what we would call in today's world, those were the new leads, right?
Mm.
And I didn't know it at the time, but it was like, I got to close my school and get on the road. And I was a road warrior before it was cool. Before it was cool. 1993. I describe it as the hardest thing I ever did, because I loved coming to my gym and opening it up and being there and getting my workout, and the students would come in, and then staying there late and cleaning the place, and I loved it. And I did that. I was teaching full time from 1980 to 1993, and I had a gym a physical space from 1995 to 1993. But closing it was the hardest thing I ever did. Best thing I ever did was closing it.
Mm.
It took me to the next chapter, but it was a lesson I didn't recognize then as that moving from the comfort zone to the discomfort zone to the holy shit, are we doing this? I think the fears are consistent whether you're a dad, a mom, an entrepreneur, or whatever. It doesn't have to be that you're opening or closing a martial arts school. It's, am I going to make this leap of faith?
Mm. Tough for your everyday dude.
It's, I think, in what way? What do you mean? Elaborate on that.
Well, just to make that move out of comfort, out of the, you know, so a lot of people think that they've arrived and it's easy to just not continue to move and run. And in other words, like run towards like what scares them.
Right.
And that's what you've done, right? You've trained guys that will run towards danger. What do you think the qualities that they have that everyday guys need? And not only that, but need, probably desperately need.
Yeah. I think at a certain level, everyone has, and this is certainly a psychology and a term you're familiar with. Um, I think everyone has some sort of addiction uh, potential. And addiction has like obsession and negative connotation,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if, you know, uh, Mother Teresa was addicted to like making people healthy and safe, and Gandhi had an addiction, and Steve Jobs had an addiction, and Jesus Christ had an addiction, and Bruce Lee had an addiction. And I'm using the term really out of place, like that's going to be create some sort of reaction. It's, but it's like that's all you care about. Isn't that an addiction?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like I said earlier, as a negative connotation, uh, but obsession always did until one day, and then addiction. Uh, and of course, the actual definition is negative, right? You can't stop. You can't. You're dysregulated, and you're not taking care of other things. So at that level, I'm messing with the definition a little bit. But I think like the guys that run towards the danger, the military, the law enforcement people that I train, um, they have a calling, right? In the same way that an entrepreneur does. You look at, let's say, Hormozy or Vaynerchuk. Most people can't sustain or model the type of energy they have, and you got to find that balance. So I follow both of them and look at stuff, and I'm like, okay, there's no way I'm doing that. But that doesn't mean what they're saying isn't inspirational, or in some places educational, and stuff like that. So, um, I call some people like accidental mentors, where they're just, you hear something and you go, oh shit, like, you read something or hear something and it just changes your trajectory a little bit. You slow down or you speed up or what have you. So I think, if where you were going with, the average person, uh, like people who play it safe, there's a difference between, I use this term in our self-defense programs, always choose safety, but don't confuse that with playing it safe. Playing it safe is a horrible way to exist,
Yep.
right? Because when you play it safe, even if you're not using this language, when you play it safe, you're choosing fear,
Right.
right? You're choosing to be afraid, but you're, the Feynman quote, you're rationalizing it as, I don't really need to do that. I'm comfortable here. Um, and so I really believe this, and it's again another audacious thing, that if my no fear program got into every parent's hands, got into every school teacher's hands, that it would change the world.
Mm.
And like, who is this guy? What an asshole, right? Like, because when you change your relationship with fear, you improve your self awareness. Because you can't. There's a moment where you go, oh, why am I afraid of that? Like, so the system is to ask yourself, to unpack the fear loop.
Mm.
Why did my physiology change there? Why did I hesitate? Why am I procrastinating? Okay. And then there's a process that we teach people. When you understand that, you change your self-awareness. Like you self-actualize, you become a little bit more real, right? And when you improve your self-awareness, you improve your critical thinking, because you can't do that without critically thinking,
Hmm.
which is, about half the world lost that in the last 5 years, right? Critical thinking. And so imagine improving your self-awareness, which is our superpower, and improving our critical thinking. Well, suddenly what happens is your access to situational awareness. This is an interesting kind of like domino effect. In the self-defense, personal safety world, we talk about it, situational awareness is the currency for safety. Because if you're not aware, you're going to get fucked. But that's the same thing for business.
Right.
That's the same thing for relationships. Someone comes home and there's a note from their wife, I left you, or their husband, or the bank account's empty and the kids are gone. They go, like, that didn't just happen yesterday and today. This has like been going on, forever. Someone is embezzling from the company and you're not paying attention to the books. And like, it's not like Monday they did that and Tuesday it's going. So situational awareness can be applied everywhere. When when you don't have functional self-awareness, you will make excuses for the situational awareness you see. So if I ask you if you've ever been betrayed in business, yes or no?
Yes.
Have you ever been betrayed in a relationship, yes or no?
Yes.
After the dust settled and you kind of like were going, oh, fuck, did you ever say to yourself or somebody close to you, kind of knew that was going to happen?
Yeah.
And I've asked that question for 20 years now. Everyone always says yes. If you knew it was going to happen, why did you let it happen? Because your critical thinking, self awareness, fear management skills weren't optimized.
Correct.
And when you learn that, you fucking change your life, man.
Hmm.
And it doesn't change that the fear spike, right? Because I can think of like a bunch of things that happened in the last week, like this morning, where I'm doing something so outside my comfort zone with massive fear, but I'm doing it because I'm managing my fear.
Mm. Yeah.
It's
A big word that you did bring up was hesitation too.
mhm,
And I think that that's always been something that I know myself and so many people that I know do struggle with in that at that point, right? The hesitation. And going back to like the original question was like, guys that like don't hesitate and run towards it.
yeah,
And, you have so many guys that do that I mean most people do hesitate. Most people do freeze
sure.
up. Um and hesitation just fucking destroys them.
So sometimes we don't want kamikaze behavior. You don't want to rush.
Well, yeah,
You're
no,
right.
absolutely not.
So I know you're not saying that, but you know, the oftentimes, I the name Osman. He was a free climber. Do you remember his name, Jess? Dan Osman. Dan Osman. He died in a climbing accident, trying to do like crazy shit. But he was legendary. When I got into climbing for a little bit, what we do is we watch everyone's Instagram reel, and we don't know about their fear or their failures or their falls. What we see is somebody's like scaling, some crazy cliff in Yosemite, but we don't realize that that took that person 2 years
Right.
to figure that out. And we see that, and we then think they're a unicorn, and maybe they're not, or maybe they are, but we don't see the work that went into that. And so when you see, and this is a big danger, it's an interesting conversation. Uh, when you see somebody kick down a door and come in and do that, and you just got a gun for home defense because there was a home invasion, in the neighborhood, and you're going, fuck. Like I was working with a guy who heard a noise in his house. He grabs his gun. He's a new gun owner. He's done one course, and he's clearing his house. And he goes, and all the lights are off. It's middle of the night. Have you ever walked around your house at night and caught your reflection in a window
Oh
and
yeah.
scared
Yeah.
yourself?
Oh
Right.
yeah.
So imagine his adrenaline is hyped up. He's clearing the house like this, looking for stuff, and he walks into the kitchen and he looks over and he sees a guy with a gun, but it's him. Right. It's
Yeah.
his reflection. And he's like this, and he turns and he's about to shoot, and he realizes it's him. But I got goosebumps right now. My physiology just changed remembering. But he had his legs started to shake. He had to put the gun down on the table, and he hired me to help him manage the fear of that because he didn't want to be afraid of if he ever needed his gun. And I was like walked him. I gave him through. I said I'll work with you for 15 minutes now. You don't need to hire me. Look, and I gave him some skills and drills and a reframe on the fear. Because what happens is, especially if you're type A personality, when you have the shit scared out of you, it could be a fucking tweet, something in the news, a test, a loan, a partner, whatever. Like anything happens, and a moment where you go, "Fuck, that was close." That creates some sort of scar in your brain, and if you don't know how to clear it, right, it becomes that like a little mental blueprint for the next time. And in our fear loop, we have a chart in our program called the cycle behavior. How do you make decisions under duress? And it kind of lays out what we call the neural circuitry of fear. And the last block before you take action is where you're trying to stay present, and then you have the past or the future, like devil and angel on your shoulder going, last time you did this, slow down, buddy, or what if this happens? And both of those cause hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the the contemplation about hesitation has to be, am I actually researching and contemplating, or am I procrastinating and rationalizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you know the difference is if you have good critical thinking skills.
Um, There's something that just made me think of that in the story of the guy that was
Gun,
walking, yeah, with the gun, is, and especially right now, so many people are like getting guns, and we hear like the good guy with the gun and stuff like that. So you have all these guys that are walking around, and I always laugh when I see these dudes like on social media, and they're like fat guys in tactical outfits, and and I just picture them like trying to roll around and do like Mission Impossible shit. I'm like,
right,
dude, you can't even run on a treadmill, but let alone are they fit to handle a lot of those situations? And nonetheless, they don't even have the critical thinking skills or the fear management skills to, if they actually got in that situation. It's cute to walk into a gun store and say, I'm going to protect my home,
right,
right? But in that moment, and I've been in those moments before. I don't know if I've ever told you. I had one situation where I was in between meetings and I was sleeping in my truck, and I was kind of like dozing off, and someone tried to break into my truck while I was in it, and I had my weapon on my center console, and getting kind of like jolted up
right,
while this kid was trying to come into my truck. It threw me for a second, and as soon as he opened it, like, and it could have gone really
right.
bad. But and I remember my body was just like it was like, yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it
for
was
sure.
like, but I had enough in me to like reach down and grab my what I have at the time, Glock 19, and literally like pull it up like this, and the kid like completely
Freaked when you saw that.
freaked. And I was like, whoa, I didn't think anyone was in here.
Right,
And I remember though, after, like, right away, because it was like, man, if for whatever reason I was actually, I was jolted, but I got really calm right away when I was able to see what was going on, and I was coming out of a dead sleep, and it happened within like 7 seconds,
sure.
you know. But I think a lot of people that they don't imagine, and I can tell you how my body felt in
Right.
that situation. But imagine, like, especially when it's something more on the line, like, in your home with your family
Yeah.
and things like that. And if you don't know this, then
So what's interesting is that um, you're in the best shape of your life right now, right? And so if you were jolted out of sleep, uh, and like the jolt is what we call in our self-defense program, the sudden stimulus introduced too quickly, and it'll always trigger a neurobiological response where like you get a fear spike, cortisol, adrenaline right away. So that'll happen to a really fit person and a really fat person. The there are I've been to a lot of ranges. There are some people that need to lose 100 pounds that are really good shooters. The difference with anything is in the training,
mm,
right? And just to make sure you're trained. But a lot of the people like you talked about, there are people like in the last few years buying guns. They don't, that's I have a lot of friends who are shooting instructors, and that's the number one fear and complaint is people buy it like buying a dog to bark. It's not trained. The gun's not trained. You're not trained. And if there's a serious situation, uh, it takes a lot of skill to shoot a gun accurately.
Right. Well, yeah, and then it's like, oh, we have a bunch of good guys with guns, but are good guys who can't
Well,
who hesitate
but
and can't use them.
yeah, and I think
Is that beneficial?
when the influencers, I know where you're going with this, and I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, but when the influencers talk about a good guy with a gun, um, very often they're citing an event where a good guy with a gun did stop violence,
Right.
so that was somebody trained. They're also talking about active duty, off duty, and retired cops, and and uh, and vets
Hmm.
that are well trained. But to your point, there's probably millions more people that need to train.
Yeah.
Like,
And how many of those situations don't go according to plan? Because I see them all the time. I sent you a couple, but like, I see
oh yeah,
dash cam footage and so even cops
yeah. No,
that are,
cops need the training for most law enforcement is very substandard.
oh, I
It's
could,
very
yeah. I mean, I see it, and I don't want to get into that because it is a whole nother conversation. But you see cops that are completely out of shape being outrun
yeah.
by,
Oh yeah.
um, yeah,
No, it's frustrating because they're one of our biggest elements in our training division is training law enforcement, and they're a lot of them are very out of shape, and their training is substandard. And I said this before that if my no fear program could get into every family's home, every kid could learn it. Um, that I really believe it would change the world, only in the sense that, and that might sound obnoxious and grandiose, but it's the same as the 15-year-old or the 20-year-old going, what do you want to do? I know that every decision we make in life, and I say it like this: fear throttles everything we do. I don't mean throttle like gives it gas, like stymies, like
yep,
suppresses it. Everything we do, from who we talk to how much money you make, to how much weight you can lift, to whether or not you can defend yourself. Because there's a moment where, if you're deadlifting, and I go, what's what your 1 rep max is for deadlift?
oh, easily well over 700 pounds.
700 pounds. So let's say it's 700 pounds. If you were setting up to deadlift 700 pounds, and let's say, do you know what you're like, what you think you could pull? Is it 705, 710?
I mean, I've done 405 for reps of 25. I
Okay. I
mean,
need
yeah,
a number for
one
one.
one number would be close to 800 pounds,
Okay.
high 700s.
So let's say 800. I can do 801, by the way, guys. Just saying. So that's insane. But if you knew that 800 was going to be your PR, and you're like doing everything, you're smacking yourself, fucking this, you're ready to go. And as you loaded your body, a butterfly came in, and you're kind of watching it, and you're getting ready to go, and you're like, and the butterfly lands on the weight, and you go, fuck. Like if you went, that butterfly makes this way more than, like that could fuck up the lift, right? What I'm
Well, I can tell you a situation where I was going. I don't remember the weight. Again, it's been a long time since I deadlifted, but like when I was deadlifting a
right.
lot. But I can tell you a situation. This is funny, but it's also it speaks to this. I was shirtless, just shorts, and I
That's
said,
surprising. I see you in
yeah,
shirts all the time.
yeah. I came down to and I wrapped up and I was all set to go and I always like do like a really heavy jerk before that kind of wakes my body up, and when I did that, my butt crack came out of my shorts a little bit, and knowing that my butt crack came out of my shorts a
Change,
little bit completely changed the entire thing, and I had to completely reset and
reset. Yeah,
everything, and it like just knowing I could feel my shorts creep down a little bit, and there's probably nobody behind me, no
right,
one would
right,
have ever seen it,
right.
but just
But
me
just
feeling my shorts go down a little bit completely like set my body off, and it
yeah,
was like there was
yeah,
nothing I could do.
yeah. So all of these are examples of fear,
Yeah.
and these. But to your credit, there, and people think this is nuts, but when I'm working with athletes, and we go back to the intuition thing that I talked about, like, or betrayal and intuition. So in our model, we get people to kind of sign off on this choose safety agreement. And the question is, what is the safest thing I could do here? Your butt crack showing, you lost your concentration. Continue to pull or drop the weight and reset. The safest, you did the safest thing.
Right.
Had you said fuck it while you lost concentration, therefore you lost some muscle recruitment because your mind went behind you to your ass, even if your head was forward, you changed the synergistic relationship and you might have fucked your back there
Hmm.
had you tried to do it. Everyone I ask who, every time I pulled my hamstring running, before I pulled it, I had an intuition that said you didn't warm up enough.
Hmm.
Anytime I hurt my back doing anything, it was like I was rushing. And so it's that moment like when a batter is getting ready to go and he does this and he steps out of the bat like the batter's box. The pro goes, I lost concentration. Because that's choosing safety, right? And so it's a it's a very wonderful thing. It's just it's a incongruent word for type A. Let's go, let's win. I go, wait a minute, what's the safest thing we could do here? And I say this when I'm teaching like active shooter, active killer, self defense shit, and I go, sometimes the safest thing to do in a death match is fight to the death, right? And people are like, whoa, like slow down, right? So choosing safety doesn't mean play it safe.
Right. I've learned that now, and we've talked about it just in private, about like the pause and reset, and acknowledging those situations, and as I've gotten more mature, and as I've been more cognizant of like the benefits of that, it's changed my life
Yeah,
in so many different ways. That reset, the minute that intuition starts to kick in, being like, well, hold
yeah.
on a second, um, you know, and thank God I'm not pressed for time because because I'm able to do that now, and it's just crazy. Not only that, but it saved me time too.
But even then, like look at all the changes that have happened in the last year. So this is the power of this process is to acknowledge the fear and go, it's there as energy. So if you were like working late at night on a new business idea, a new concept, a new song, a new this, and you were so tired and you were going, man, I wish I have no coffee. I don't have any energy drink. Like you're looking for some stimulant to give you the energy. Well, fear can do that. It just feels like shit. I always make the joke, you have 3 good days in a row and nobody ever gets up like on Wednesday and goes, man, I hope something catastrophic happens today so I can practice my resiliency. Right?
Right.
Like fear teaches you like you can get through things.
You say mismanaged fear is paralysis, but what does managed fear look like in the body and mind?
Just taking action, just doing stuff. So one of the things that I help people reconcile is people think in general that stuff should be easy or come easy, even if they say they don't. I know it's going to be a struggle, it'll be uphill. But when you start something, like think about something that broke or went sideways. You didn't go, oh, good, that's supposed to happen. Your first reaction is like, fuck, right? Come on, man. And how many times do we hear people say, why does this always happen to me? Even if it's just an internal thought. So when we start anything, there's an assumption that there will be no obstacles. Even if you're aloof enough and intelligent enough to say, of course, we're going to have guys. We're starting this thing. Remember, there's going to be challenges. Life's a roller coaster ride. But anytime, I can tell you this: I'm 65. Anytime something has fucked up, I never went, "Oh, good." And you hear like famous, whether it's Jocko or Ed Milet, or people say, this didn't happen to me, it happened for me. And my mistakes, Chuck Norris said, I never lost a fight. Yes, sure, I lost fights, but I always learned something, so I won. And like if Chuck Norris actually lost a fight and I wasn't there, and Chuck, don't beat me up, um, if he went back to the changing room with a smile on and his team's like, oh, sorry, no, this is great, I learned what not to do, like the classic who's the guy that invented the light bulb?
Thomas Edison.
Yeah, Thomas Edison, that guy. It took, what is it, 1,000 tries? No, I figured out 999 ways. Bullshit, he didn't say that. He was in his fucking lab going, fuck, right? And maybe he wasn't. And if he wasn't, and if Chuck Norris didn't get upset when he lost, what were they? What's the word I would call them? Fucking unicorn.
Yeah.
They'd be the unicorn, right? Because I know that if you and I were trying to make the light bulb and we were like 100 in, we'd be like, fuck,
Oh yeah.
right? Right? But I
I can
know,
hardly when I'm trying to beat a boss in a video game.
well,
I lose my mind.
but so this is the difference between like when I'm training people, and this is some of the feedback that I get from people is like, this is just real. This just makes sense,
Right.
right? Because there's so much blah 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 psychobabbly, and it's not to knock. There's good therapy out there, and I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying for it was almost like the conversation at lunch when Jesse asked you about certain types of therapies, and you said no, like we're now. This is now. This is your life now. You can't carry that shit. You can acknowledge it, but you need to start working now and be. That's courage to do that. That's fear management, and so mismanaged fear. And paralysis is a strong word, and sometimes I'll say things to be provocative, but mismanaged fear also looks like procrastination.
Mm-hmm.
Mismanaged fear looks like um, uh, playing it safe. Mismanaged fear is, the old classic. I think I don't know if it was Edison who said it, but also the rocking chair test. You're 80 or 90, and you go, "What would have happened if I had done that?" And so the hard thing for people if they don't change their relationship with fear is managed fear isn't comfortable. It just means you're using the fear as fuel.
Mm.
There's something about this talk, this hard talk, this next chapter in your life, this next move is way outside your comfort zone. And so there's fear. As a society, we've never been taught that fear is a positive thing. It always has a negative connotation. So when I was growing up, my parents, my coaches, my mentors, no one ever looked at my piss poor performance in sports or school and said, "What's your relationship with fear?" They're like, "Hey, try harder. Don't be a pussy. Let's go." Like, so that doesn't help you change your relationship with fear. Every time I felt fear, I procrastinated.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'd be up at bat, metaphoric, whatever bat is for anything, up at bat going, don't strike out, don't fuck out, don't strike out. Even if the facade is, like I've gone into negotiations and meetings where, I'm happy I'm wearing a jacket or a dark shirt because I'm sweating like a motherfucker. I'm so nervous. But what everyone sees is, hi, Tony Blauer. But inside I'm like, oh, fuck. I hope I really need this to happen. And that's fear. If you remember Iggy Pop. I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but one of my favorite quotes is from him. He said, imagine if desperation were attractive. And body language is 60% of communication. So if you're with somebody who's really dialed in, how many times have you left a meeting or an event where someone meets you and you, I don't like that guy, or I don't like that girl, or something's off there?
Mm-hmm.
That's the desperation element oozing. That's their aura. That's the energy they're projecting. All of that can be remedied by understanding psychological fear, not biological and physiological. Your adrenaline dump. When I work with people on, number one fear of the world is still, ironically, public speaking. So I'll work with people on their public speaking stuff, and I go, look. They go, yeah, but my palms are sweaty. I'm breathing. We need to fix the head because if you fix the head, the mind navigates the body.
Right. Hmm. I like that. You said a couple times that, and I've heard you say this a number of times actually, that everybody has the same biology. For business leaders that are listening to this, how does understanding your human biology give you a competitive edge?
Well, it comes back to that whole psychology, neurobiology connection that if you understand that it's normal for your physiology to change, that's the biology part. It's normal for your physiology to change, especially if you're not a unicorn,
Mm.
right? Uh, that if you know what you're supposed to feel, then your self-talk can be more forgiving or coaching. And
Hmm.
so if you understand your biology, the neurobiology, the kinesiology, psychology, if you understand it, you're more coachable, both dealing with a business coach or your self coach. You're the analytical process that we teach people where you can come up with your, oh, fuck, this is why I'm procrastinating. This is the thing. And that's the thing I need to do. So now I need to manage my fear, right? And so the more you know about the human weapon system, the more you know about your operating system, the more coachable you are. You can manipulate yourself because you know what you're supposed to be doing. Very often, like for example, when you get a fear spike, right? And this is the self-awareness piece. I'll say very often to my smoke show wife, who's sitting over there, uh, hey babe, um, what's wrong? 99% of the time she'll go, I don't know. I just don't feel good. Or, I don't want to talk about it. And a lot of it, it's like, because it's not clear in her mind yet. The greater your self awareness is, the faster you can talk about what's bothering you. So if the only resource we have, and this is such an important one for not just entrepreneurs and business people, because business loves speed,
Hmm.
right? Violence loves speed. Dating loves speed. You wait too long and you finally get up enough nerve to go ask the girl out. She's like, oh, I just started dating somebody, right?
Right.
Like everything loves speed. Don't confuse speed with rushing. It's
Mm.
like when it's time to go, go, right? And so the the concept of this connection to managing your fear improves your self-awareness, improves your critical thinking. If time is the only resource that we can't regenerate, the less time you spend in the fucking fear loop in your life, the more time you have to live your life.
Mm.
And that's a fucking heavy concept.
That is.
And a lot of us spend, myself included, way too much time in that fear loop. And think about any time, we asked this question, I've mentioned this before, fear has a weight on you. When you get good news, you got into college, you got your test back and everything's good. She said yes, he said yes. The loan got approved. The business is doing well. You open up and, oh shit, we didn't sell anything. Fuck. Oh my God. Oh my God, we're out of product. Like when you have fear lifted from you, you actually physically get up and move around. Think about it anytime you got
Mm.
really good news. So when I ask people, like, what is the weight of fear on your life? It's literally like going for a run with a weight vest instead of running without a weight vest. You
Hmm.
don't even realize it's on you until somebody takes it off you.
Yep. I definitely know all, like I've acknowledged
Sure.
all of those feelings. And it's true. When the minute of the second I have a breakthrough moment or something like that, I get right up off my
Oh
seat.
yeah,
And
adrenaline ready to go.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and, and so when you come back to your question, you know, how do you make biology into this? It's knowing what your body and mind are supposed to do in situations, and so somebody who's a unicorn then in business who like everything they touch turns to gold, um, you won't be interested in this conversation unless they're just fans of us
Right.
because they're like, what are they talking about? Because they don't have the same. I remember going to breakfast with this guy um, who ran a consulting company, and we were just catching up. And I said, "Yeah, I got another guy ripping me off into martial arts again. I'm like the most ripped off guy, and because we're creating new things for people to do." And I said, I hate this. I fuck, I'm gonna have to hire a lawyer and send a cease and desist letter. And he smiles. He goes, "I love that." I go, "How do you love that?" He goes, like, aren't you a confrontation management specialist? I said, yeah, but why my program's so good is because I fear fear. I hate confrontations. I just want everyone to get along. I've literally said this. So, you know, um, we're the number one behaviorally based self-defense training company in the world in terms of like boutique, customized scenario-based training for all sectors. The I have said this 100 times. If I woke up tomorrow and there was world peace, I'd be out of a job and I'd be happy with that. I would get another job. I'd come work for you. I'd find a way to provide for my family. It wouldn't bother me at all. That's how much I abhor fear and violence.
Mm.
And and uh, and that's heavy. And so here I am at breakfast talking to this guy, and he's going, "I love suing people." And I go, "Dude," and he was confused that I didn't like that because he thought I like fighting. I said, "No, I train people not how to fight. I train them how to not fight. But if the pen's mightier than the sword, I've added this. It's only mightier than the sword if you know how to use a sword and you're willing to use it." So when I work with entrepreneurs or business people or cops or military, I make sure you go home and then everything else pales in comparison. But that starts with understanding the operating system.
Mm.
So you're not fooling yourself. You're not deluding yourself with, because there's so much bullshit out there just in terms of self-defense. Um, what works. I mean, everything works in a fucking demo,
Right.
right? But when you actually study real violence, you see the things that do and don't work very quickly.
Hmm. I want to do kind of a rapid fire real quick and just
Okay.
see where this goes. Okay. Um, what's the biggest myth men believe about fear?
I, I, I I'm gonna say, well, so here's I'm gonna answer it two ways. Most men, because they see fear as weakness, will puff up their chest and go, "I ain't afraid of nobody. No fear, and no fear." So most men think that saying no fear, I'm not afraid of anything, will make them fearless. I don't know if that's quite the answer, but so but that's what I see most people of. And I go, well, if you're really loud about saying you're not afraid of anything, you're afraid of something,
Right.
right? Because really quiet people, they're the dangerous ones. Um, but in terms of like a specific myth, it's the one that I've lived with my whole life. I must not be good enough. I must not be ready. And so it's that, and listen, successful people don't live lives of quiet desperation. But if you look at people who have been married multiple times, no matter what deal they have, no matter how much money they have, they're still miserable. They need a bigger jet. They need more toys. And that's common in the really, really wealthy, successful people. I believe it has a lot to do with something related to fear. And I've never had a scenario situation where when I help somebody peel that onion, we get down to it, that they'll say, well, because of this. And eventually, when they break down and break it down, they're saying, well, I was kind of worried that this would happen.
Hmm.
Or someone would classify me this or define me as this. And so, you know, I mean, it's a heavier, longer answer, but it's this idea of if I acknowledge this vulnerability, I will appear weaker to me or others.
What's the most dangerous thing about hesitation?
Well, there's a famous Ed Parker quote. He's the guy who created American Kempo karate. He said, "Those who hesitate meditate horizontally." So that's like a cartoony example for managing violence. But if business loves speed and violence loves speed and romance loves speed, hesitation costs you whatever you were going after.
Hmm.
But it's a tricky thing that we need to unpack because uh, if I said to you, I want you to uh, research this, that's not hesitation. But if you know what you need to do and you're not doing it, that's hesitation.
Right.
And the only reason you hesitate is because you're in the fear loop and you're not managing the fear.
Hmm. What separates a protector from a pretender?
What separates a protector from a pretender? Wow. Um, well, the protector chooses courage, and the pretender just talks about what they're going to do. And when it comes time to pull the trigger, there's an excuse that, like, well, I did this or I didn't do this or it wasn't right. I was worried about this. Uh, what's interesting there is the protector. Like, for example, I've walked away from a lot of situations where I wanted to do something else or I was really scared, but my sensibility. Like, I've been in a couple of situations where I was very developed in my skills, my self-defense skills, very polished in my de-escalation strategies and everything. But my intuition said this person is fucking dangerous. And I'm not going to let myself die, which means if I choose to engage this person, one or both of us are going to die because this person's evil and I'm not. But I'm not going to lose. So the only way I'm going to lose is if I'm killed. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so I always tell people it's the hardest thing to teach an alpha male, that it takes a lot of courage to walk away from a fight.
Mm.
It takes a lot of courage to walk away from a relationship, from a business. Like I said, when I closed my school, I didn't go, I think I should close the school and go on the road. Okay, hello, cancel my lease. I mean, it was months and months. It was maybe 2 years of, but nobody saw me biting my nails, right?
Mm-hmm. Why are most people terrible under pressure?
Because when you say under pressure, those scenarios specifically, Justin, are anomaly events, meaning uh, you didn't start deadlifting 700 pounds. So if I rolled 700 pounds to you and said, lift this, and I had a gun at you, you'd have blown out your back. But you started with 125, or whatever, and you build it. So metaphorically, because I know your audience is a lot of fitness people in your audience, is you build strength by exerting yourself under pressure. So most people don't do well under pressure because they haven't anticipated the things they're going to experience, and stress inoculated, created, like when I'm training military and law enforcement, one of the things I say is like, I go, what's the Murphy moment in this scenario? Or you know what Murphy moment is? Like, what could go wrong?
Okay.
If something's going to go wrong, what would go wrong? And they'll go, well, if somebody attacked me here, I'll go, well, what have you done for that? And they go, well, nothing. I said, well, you have no idea what you're going to do then. You got to improvise in a sudden death situation. Fucking horrible. Let's reverse engineer that. That's why I developed my high gear suit, and I created for our tier one military SWAT groups. We created a protocol. This is going back to the 90s, called "No room to shoot, no time to shoot, no need to shoot," and it's describing a situation where you come into a room and the threat is right there, and you don't have time to do all the stuff you were trained to do. So we're like looking at these like anomaly events, but if you train them, right? So we have a maximum. What makes you think you'll think to do it if you haven't trained to do it, right? So,
Right.
so we would do these like, is this possible? Or are we just making shit up now? And we would go, is it probable? Or is it possible? That was our filter. Is it probable? Is it possible? Everything's possible. What if like a mermaid with an Uzi? I go, well, like, yeah. But, I'd make fun of people like that. And they go, what about this? And I go, in the history of the world, has anyone ever been attacked like that? And they'd say, no, but it could happen. I go, no. If it could happen, it would have happened. And we don't have time to train for the one in a billion. What always happens? Like, for example,
I'm sorry,
you're
but
still dealing with
the
the mermaid with the
an
Uzi.
Uzi.
I wonder if Jay would like that one, right?
I know he would.
Do you remember my other
That
one?
image is just now stuck in my head.
Do you
Yeah.
remember that, the tiny tambourine band? Jay shit himself
I'm
now.
sorry. I
Yeah.
apologize, but that just
But
fucked me
literally,
up.
so I've been teaching defense against the sucker punch for 40 years. It's in 1987 when I developed the SPEAR system, spontaneous protection enabling accelerated response, the first system to ever really weaponize the startle response.
Hmm.
It said that with there's sudden violence and you're caught off guard, executive function is hijacked, your cognitive brain is bypassed, your neurobiological system deploys a startle response to cover the head, push away danger. Everyone does it, regardless of training. Black belt, beginner, same thing. But experts don't want to admit to that. I go, dude, like, this is a biological airbag. Why are you
Right.
resisting it?
Well, yeah, we talked about this on the last
Yeah.
podcast too, and it's like I would tell you that every single fight that I've ever gotten, for the most part, always started with a sucker punch. Every single fight that I've ever seen break out, for the most part, has started with a sucker
Yeah.
punch.
But let me ask you this. You did a little bit of karate or boxing and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Honest question. When you were learning karate, how many times did the instructor say, This is how most fights start. It's a sucker punch. Let me show you how that looks.
Never.
Never.
That was caught us.
Right. And so this still goes on. Like I'm still telling people, look, if you want to be safer in the street, you can train for everything that's possible, or you can prepare for what's probable.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Last question. You've reinvented yourself multiple times. I've done that with my own life. What's the hardest part about letting go of your old identity so that your next evolution can take over?
It's everything we've been talking about today. It's fear. Am I, do, do I believe that this next iteration of me is the next like step towards that self-actualization? I know it's a big word, like where you're, you know, you you notice as you get older. We talked about this at lunch where you were giving an example. You said, I was the same as I was back then. And I said, no, you weren't. You have certain elements of intuition and wisdom that makes your vibe, your energy completely different.
Mm.
And you can't notice that. Um, uh, the so when you look back, like there's things I learned in the last 5 years about myself where I've changed certain things, and I send messages to my kids all the time, and I text them. That's how you communicate these days, but as horrible as that is. And I say things like, screenshot this. You're going to want to remember this. And they're like, thanks, Dad. Love you, Dad. But I know when I had accidental mentors when I was 20 or 30, and they'd say things that were cliches and important, I didn't think they applied to me. I'd go, thanks, I appreciate that. But I'd be going like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like I'm superhuman. I don't need to stretch like that. I don't need to warm up my body. I don't need to, learn about finances or that. Like you just think you have it. And now I'm in my 60s and I'm remembering all these people that told me the things I'm understanding now. So if you could live your life backwards, you'd say, oh, I would like wisdom in my 20s and 30s.
Mm.
Imagine if you knew what you know about how you turned your life around. If you knew that in your 20s, your life wouldn't have happened to you. But then you wouldn't be Justin helping all the people that you are now. You wouldn't have the business that you have, and you wouldn't have the relationships you have. You
Mm.
have to go through that.
100%. This was great.
My friend.
This was really great. Guys, if you like what you saw, make sure you click subscribe, engage with this for us, help us out in the algorithm. We're going to put all of Tony's information below. There's a lot. Trust me, I know. But we're going to make sure that if you want to get a hold of Tony, that you're able to right from here. And again, thank you for tuning in. We'll check you guys out next time on the Justin Wenzel podcast. We're out.